So, just to give a broad overview of what this workshop is going to look like today, we'll be going into a little bit more of the systemic background of why we're looking at continuous quality improvement and specifically service plans and how this all fits together. As a model, we're going to then broadly get into what is the CQI process. We'll get into how to form a CQI team and what roles need to be filled with a CQI team, selecting a topic for CQI projects and how you would go into selecting your own topic when it's not pre-selected most of the time. We'll get into then how to do SMARTY goals to ensure that you're going to be more likely to meet the goal that you're setting out for yourself as a CQI team. We'll do throughout this whole workshop some group work that will come together and just have a little bit more conversations to engage with this material. And then we'll wrap it up by talking a little bit about what sort of work will be done in between these workshops, specifically in this case from March. So because I am a big fan of just reiterating a lot of things that I've already talked about in this regard, I wanted to give a timeline again of where we are at with this whole initiative. So we introduced this conception of the CQI workshops in January during the regional meetings. We're now here in February with this first workshop. There's going to be the in-between month of March, where there'll be a little bit of work that you'll work on together. And that's going to then reconvene in April for workshop number 2, where you're going to show a little bit more about what you've worked on, what's been happening with those specific topics, and seeing if there's any sort of assistance or that could be given at that point. There'll be additional work that will be given in between month of May. We'll then come back into June to again kind of see where everyone's at and getting the final piece of this CQI process and workshop content. There'll be another in between work in July where you're really kind of finalizing these projects and implementing them. And then we're going to have these workshop office hours in August and October where we really are going to be discussing sort of what challenges maybe you have faced, what sort of additional things maybe would you like to see from CA on this whole thing, and then hopefully sharing some of your successes and what results you found from your CQI projects at that point. So with that, I'm actually going to kick it off to my partner, Ava Berman, for this next section of the workshop, where she's going to really get into systemically why are we looking at CQI and why are we looking at service plans this time around. So Ava, with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Walter, and good morning, everyone. So BPS GA2B really sets the stage for CQI to occur within programs. According to the standard, sites will establish a comprehensive quality improvement plan. And this plan is updated annually. So each year, sites will identify an improvement area or improvement areas of focus. And this can be a new goal based on site level data or observations from the field. And it can also be a more aggressive goal from the prior year. For example, if a program is currently at 30% prenatal enrollment, they may set a goal of 40% in 2023 and work on that in subsequent years. So once a site has established its goals, it's really important to know your baseline. So where you're at currently, your goal, and we will talk about setting goals later on in the presentation, how you will monitor and track your progress toward your goals, as well as how you will address any issues that may come up. And I should note that this is an accreditation requirement. So you can go to the next slide, Walter. So just to give you a sense of the current state of service plans right now in Healthy Families. So we pulled data from the service plan analysis report from November 2021 to October 2022. And we do have a wide range. So programs range from 100% of PC1s having service plans to 7% of PC1s having service plans. And just to get a little bit more into the details of that, we identified that 12 programs have 100% of PC1s with a service plan, so they are meeting the standard, and 72% of programs are below 100%, so they are not meeting the standard. Next slide. So to provide a little bit of policy guidance regarding service plan, this is BPS 6.1. So 6-1A requires a service plan to be in place within 2 weeks of frog completion. With 6-1B, once the service plan is in place, the supervisor and the home visitor will develop different activities or strategies to address various risk factors and determine a timeline for implementing these strategies. And then home visitors and supervisors should be discussing service plans in depth at least quarterly per family, and then updating the service plan as needed. And then the last piece of this is 6-1C, where the FSS will implement the plan, determine readiness for new activities, and chart next steps. Slide, please. And then the policies are also tied into 2 new PIs related to service plans. So PI 14 is the initiation of the service plan. So it requires that all families receive a service plan within 2 weeks of frog completion. And then PI 15 involves service plan in-depth discussions. So it requires supervisors and home visitors to meet at least quarterly to discuss service plans for each family.
Thank you, Ava. I appreciate that. So just to broadly show what this could look like visually then for everyone, and how this kind of flow of what Ava just discussed is this is how we see it, is that there's this frog initiation and service plan for BPS2. And that really leads us into the performance indicator 14 of having a service plan after at least 2 weeks after the frog. This then leads into this, cyclical process that we're supposed to be seeing, with service plans being updated and the activities based on the service plan being updated based on conversations that are occurring in supervision, which will then again lead to more updates and activities, again, leading to this whole reiterative cyclical process here. And as a result of that, it ultimately is leading to the performance indicator 15, where we really would like you to have an in-depth conversation between the home visitor and the supervisor as a result of that, at least quarterly. And we figured, and again, this is the way we wanted to do this, as we saw this as an opportunity to not only have Healthy Family New York programs do their continuous quality improvement projects, which again is needed for accreditation, but then also increasing fidelity to all these other aspects that are going with our model here. The additional component that we wanted to add to this when we're thinking about analysis for this is that Ava mentioned that we have this range of programs that's going from 100% of their PCIs having a service plan to 7%. What this also then indicates is that if we're thinking about it this way, is that 70% of programs are not meeting that standard, which means they're not necessarily meeting performance indicator 14. And subsequently, if we're adding to this, they're not necessarily meeting performance indicator 15. And this is also an opportunity potentially of growth for the programs that have 100% of their PC1s having a service plan as well. If they aren't, is that they need to be discussing these service plans in supervisions, at least quarterly. We were going to do a little bit more of an in-depth analysis on this, but we realized that there's really some digging that programs could be doing on their own, since this is kind of more of an individualized project. Looking at your supervision logs and your home visiting logs could really afford a program an opportunity to really see, are they having these in-depth conversations or not? And we did also want to mention that the service plan analysis report, which indicates whether your PC1s have a service plan or not, will also eventually include a way to measure supervision conversations around service plans as well. So that will become a little bit easier down the road for you as programs to be able to check. So we figured at this point, this would be an opportunity for you at this point in the in-between months to start looking at your own data about indicating whether your PC1s have a service plan and whether you're having conversations around those as well. So now really to get into kind of this meat and potatoes portion of the workshop, broadly speaking, the CQI process can really be broken down into 4 main steps. This first one, forming a CQI team. Then that leads you to identify an improvement area or select a topic that you're working to improve within your program. This leads you then to do a plan, do, study, act cycle, or what we call PDSA cycles. And ultimately, this leads to what's lessons learned. So ultimately, what are you deciding? What changes are made to your program based on what you've done in your plan, do, study, act cycle as well? So today, we're actually going to be focusing on these first two processes, forming a CQI team, and then identifying an improvement area. And I know that sounds like a lot, but this first process of forming a CQI team really is kind of a fluid process, and you're going to make additions to the CQI team throughout this in order to make sure that you really have adequate representation occurring on your CQI team here. So forming a CQI team, and I would like to reiterate that we have sent out these toolkits for you that really broke down the CQI processes a bit more. We've given you a forming a CQI team handout as well as a Smarty Goals toolkit as well that can kind of give you additional information on top of what I'm going to be discussing today. So more than anything, we need to establish what a CQI team is. The CQI team develops the change strategy, and a change strategy is what you are doing to accomplish your goal. They test whether the change strategy worked as it was intended. They decide what changes, if any, should be made to the program based on the results of what their change strategy produced. And they make sure and ensure that representation by all groups who will be affected by the CQI project is on the team. So this would mean anybody that is all agency level staff. So this could be program managers, supervisors, home visitors, administration, and it could also and should be in a lot of cases, the families that are being served by the program as well should have a role on the CQI team. Additionally, when you're trying to form a CQI team, there are certain key elements that you need to be thinking through and answering in order to form this team. The first being, who will lead the CQI initiative? Who has enough of a presence here that can have everyone and set aside enough time for everyone to be working on the CQI project, bring everyone together and know enough about the community to bring in other outside actors and agents in order to discuss what is needed for the CQI team and offer support where it's needed. Another question will be is how often will team members meet? So the CQI team needs to address how many times do they need to meet in order to have enough time to accomplish the tasks to do in between meetings, as well as make adjustments to the project as needed and be able to check in with enough time to make those adjustments with team members. The third is what are expectations for member participation? So essentially, this is the idea of what ground rules are you going to set together with your CQI team? And this is really just to ensure that everyone feels safe and we're promoting some shared power opportunities for the CQI team so everyone is comfortable enough to be able to share their input on the project as they're going forward. And the final question that really needs to be asked with this is, how will information be disseminated? Really, this is the idea that we need to make sure that you're going to describe the process for communicating CQI topics, findings, updates that are going on with the project. What findings have you found with your project? Are you having any challenges with those projects? And how are you going to communicate those to several different actors, including key stakeholders with this, CQI team members to each other agency staff members, community partners, and even agency leadership as well. Once all those have been asked and answered, really what we do is then we take on these specific roles within a CQI team. So in this case, we have these 6, which is the sponsor, champion, facilitator. We have subject matter experts or lived experience experts, meeting scribes, and data liaisons. So this first role is the sponsor. They're typically the ones with the most authority on the CQI team in that they're the ones that are working to set aside time for the CQI team to work on the project. They offer support to the team wherever it's actually needed. And they're the ones who are going to build outside relationships with other community actors to help the project move forward as needed. The champion is the person who consistently encourages participation in the CQI process. They keep up morale with the CQI team. They attend relevant trainings to the change strategy. They decide how information will be distributed. They also disseminate all that information between not only CQI team members, but again, other people that are involved with the CQI project and will be impacted by the CQI project. They're also going to be the ones that are going to try and foster outside the box thinking from their CQI team members as well. The next are facilitators. These are the ones that are responsible for prepping meeting agendas, keeping meetings on track and making sure that they're staying on track. And they're also the ones that are going to be keeping all the status of the complete tasks, ongoing tasks, and future tasks that need to be complete for the CQI project. We then have subject matter experts for the CQI team, which is supposed to help address the issue based on their expertise or based on their lived experience expertise with this. The next is the meeting scribe. They are the ones who take notes for each meeting and share all the meeting notes with team members. And finally, we have a data liaison. Typically, they're the person who is going to gather the data for the CQI project. They verify all the quality of the data. They do all the analysis for the team, and they also ensure that the CQI team is interpreting the results correctly as well with that. So it's worth mentioning that these roles can be filled in by multiple people as well. So you could potentially, if you know that there's a high dispersion of work, you could have 2 people that are a champion. And it could also be that one person can fill multiple roles as well. If you notice that the meeting scribe and facilitator, for example, seem to really have an overlap of duties, one person can fill both those roles well. There's really no hard rules here for who can fill these roles. It's really what works best for the program and for the CQI team here. So with this, this is actually going to kick off our first breakout room discussion. I really want to recognize that some of these are going to be very loaded questions, and that we could probably spend a couple hours just talking about some of these on their own. But really the whole intention here is to beginning your thoughts, starting to think around these ideas and how you're going to be thinking about your own CQI teams. So we're going to be giving you about 15 minutes to discuss this with your groups. It will be who will you include from your program on your CQI team? What role will they serve and why? So what about them would make them a good fit for that role? When do you recruit family members to join the team? So we're really getting at this idea of what topics and why, because it could be that if you're doing service plans as your topic, maybe family members don't necessarily need to be included on a CQI team this round, but there might be other topics that would make them more relevant into this conversation. So what topics do you feel would be the best to include family members and why? And then finally, how will the CQI team for you create and foster a safe place for members to participate? So in other words, how are you going to create shared power and safety for everyone? Especially since there might be some sort of power dynamic if you're including family members, for example, on your CQI team, and they don't want to necessarily maybe risk their relationship with the program. So how are we going to create shared power and safety there as well? So with that, I will leave it to going to the virtual hallway. Hope you don't get lost, and I look forward to hearing your conversations.
Walter, can you please
Yep.
make sure you copy these questions into the chat so everyone can have them in their breakout rooms?
Yes, I will copy and paste those.
And whoever doesn't get assigned to a breakout room, just stay put and I will put you somewhere. Just let me know who you are. So I'm opening all the rooms now.
Well, who we would involve for, you know, different themes for what the goal is.
I don't think you need to. I need to sign it from Healthy Families perspective.
Sorry.
I just wanted your approval before I signed it.
Sorry, I think if somebody's talking, you might need to mute if we're not talking about the breakout room conversation. Any other thoughts? What kind of topics did people kind of think about when they thought about what families should be included on? Because again, just to reiterate, families might not necessarily need to be involved in the process of discussing this, but maybe there's other topics that were pertinent to this. So Esther, I see that you raised your hand.
Yeah, just, you know, we didn't have quite enough time to discuss every little topic, but
Yeah.
we did get some good insights from Marlene's perspective and her team and her program, because they have been involved with their own CQI process through the McVie funding that the rest of us in Healthy Families plain without any extra funding don't have, and we never experienced. So she was able to give us some good insights on that and how it works for her. Like she was letting us know about how her supervisors are the ones that are tasked and involved with this major decisions of what needs to be improved, what needs to be changed, what needs to be really looked at, and how does that relate to the home visitors, and then how they really use time purposely to celebrate and acknowledge everybody when they are doing quarterly meetings, just to celebrate those things that they actually get done, and the entire team gets involved in this, and it's really, really good for them. So we didn't really get to do any other conversation, and I kicked myself out by accident. So we were talking about something else, and I just didn't hear it. So if my friends want to talk, they're welcome to it.
That sounds great. It sounds like you still had a great conversation though for that time, even if you weren't able to address all these questions. Again, we know I knew they were loaded. They're deep. So, I'm
sorry, I just want to add real quick. I didn't
Yeah.
give many chance to the ladies to talk as I was so excited because I know when I first see the CQI, I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, one more thing to do here. And you get a little frustrated because it looks like it's too much, but I was telling them how helpful is this when you do it as a team. And it's exciting because you see results, you see how things been changing. And it's like, of course, I have the CQI for McPhee, but I also do little CQIs on the side for my staff. And it's like when we do the family goal plan for the families and we achieve that goal and we celebrate with the family, I want to celebrate with my staff too, because, oh my God, we did this. This is another thing that I can take out of that list of things that we have to improve. And that's the whole idea, to have not that many things to be improving, if not keeping it running and flow.
Absolutely.
So people don't get nervous. Trust me, it's fun.
Yeah, this is Karen. I work at Public Health Solutions with Marlene and Riza, and Riza's team has also done some CQI stuff over the years. But I'm also in the McVie projects. And what I was telling the group is it does feel a bit overwhelming at first when you're introduced. However, the forms that you provide, that you document on, and we get time to create, like the one that was emailed prior to the meeting, it breaks it down into such small little chunks that it becomes quite manageable. And I think it's also important at the very beginning to think about what's manageable. What can you get data on quickly that, at a quarterly rate that doesn't require a lot of math or anything? I mean, it can literally be an MIS report that's going to show you how you're doing. And then you set a goal. I'm going to increase service plan completion rate by 10% by the end of the year. And it just comes together and it's rewarding. So it's just wanted to share my experience.
No, thank you for that. And that's something we'll get into. The big two things I want to pull from that, Karen, that you said, so thank you for that, is one, we really want you to be excited about this. This is something that you should be picking that's important to you, especially when you're doing it on your own. Something that's important for your service delivery. And in addition to that as well, is that we want you to be able to pick reasonable goals for yourself. We don't want you to be trying to strive for absolute perfection here if it's going to be something that's going to cause stress and really deflate you morally as a CQI team. We want you to give reasonable goals that still are working towards improvement, towards service delivery of families. So thank you for that. This has been a great conversation. We do need to keep pushing forward a little bit, and then I would love to have this continue the conversation a little bit more afterwards, if that's good with everyone else. So I'll get started on the next portion of this talk, which is, once, for this big fictitious program here together, we formed our CQI team. Our next step in the CQI process is we need to select a topic for a CQI project or for our change plan. And fully recognizing, the topic for most people have been selected this time around, service plans, but there's other ways that you can kind of select your own topic when you do this on your own. And the best way to do that is really through data. Data is really going to we need to be thinking about it are a tool that are going to illuminate some aspects of your program that might not be working as efficiently as it could. And the problem is that we tend to think of data a lot of the time as a report card. It's telling us whether we're passing or failing. That's not what it is. Data are a tool, and it's a very specific tool. It's not a hammer. It's not going to give you a fix for anything. Data are a flashlight. It's really just there to show you what's going on and for you to decide what's important to you as a program and as a CQI team on what you would like to fix to be a little bit more efficient at this point. So ways that you could measure and select your own topic could be, you could look at how you're doing on performance targets and indicators. If you're on a program improvement plan, seeing if there's something that's translatable to a quick CQI project. Best practice standards, seeing where you might be able to get up to another higher rank there. With your equity plans, if you have an analysis with the annual service review or quarterlies. And then it could even be that your data are informal. If you're noticing that there's some sort of trend with everyone that you're receiving from your participants, if staff all are noticing something together, your community advisory board notices that there's something that could be worked on there, that's an opportunity then for you to select that as your topic for a CQI project there. So with that then is, once you've selected that topic, once you identified something that we would like to have improved about the program, we move on to what are called SMARTY goals or SMARTY statement. This really is just a way of making your goal more likely to be achievable if you meet these criteria. So for the rest of the talk, what we're going to be doing is going over each of these specific criteria here, and I'll lay out what questions a CQI team should be asking, so that way they are going to be able to see that they're actually meeting each of these goals. So the first aspect of SMARTY, which is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, obtainable, relevant, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable, is specific. You need to have it be specific because it's going to be easier for you as a CQI team to determine how you're going to actually be addressing your goal and meeting that goal. And it's really going to be very clear and concrete for your CQI team to know when they've actually achieved it or not. So I know this sounds a little silly, but the easiest and simplest way to understand whether your CQI team is specific with your goal is to ask your 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. So the first is who. So you're asking yourself as a CQI team, who is affected by this goal that you're setting out for your CQI team? And who is actually impacting it? Is it home visitors? Is it supervisors? Who is being impacted by it and who is affecting it? So we know for here, in this case, it's probably going to be supervisors and home visitors for service plans. What is really you asking, what is your major objective? So if you notice in your program, 15% of your PC1s have service plans, your what might be, okay, we want to get those up to 50%. That's your what. Our objective is to get up to 50% of service PC1s with service plans. Where is where this change is occurring, and not a physical location where we know this is happening at your programs. It's where in the process is this going to be implemented. So for example, on service plans, it could be you notice that there's something going on between when the frog is initiated and when the service plan is developed with the supervisors. So it could be that you know that you need to target where you're going to make this improvement strategy in between that portion, in between where the frog and the service plan is actually being put into the MIS. You're going to target your change plan right there. When is when you want to see your change occur. So for us, you could say our when is, we know we want to be done by October 31st, 2023. We know we want to have our results written up by then. So that's our when and why. And we know why we have to be doing CQI projects. We know we would like to improve services broadly, sure. But why is really your purpose here on why you've chosen this as your topic? Why will doing this improve your service delivery families? What is it about this project that's going to help you as a program improve your service delivery to families? If all of those can be answered clearly and concretely, you know that you have specifics. And you could take this even further as a CQI team. You could have your CQI team members think about what their interpretation of the goal is and actually come up with their own 5 Ws. And then you could all meet collectively together, see where there's differences and overlaps, and create even more specific 5 Ws and a goal based on those discrepancies and overlaps. And then you could take that even further once you've come to a conclusion on that and give it to somebody who's not on the CQI team, have them do their interpretation of what the goal is in their 5 Ws. And you could even then make even more adjustments from that. And you know that once you've all done that, you really have a very specific goal in mind for you as a CQI team. The next idea that we need to meet for Smarty is measurable. Really, it's just that your goal criteria is measurable. And this again is that the outcome of the change plan needs to be measured by collective data here. So there's several questions that you could ask as a CQI team in this case. First off, you could just ask, are there data currently being collected for this outcome? And if not, what needs to be done to collect it? So first off, are there data being collected? If not, what do we need to do to collect it? 2, if we're thinking about what outcome we want to see, what sort of questions can we create that will measure that outcome? So if it's already not being collected. And 3, how can the outcome of interest be translated into measurable data if it's not? So for us, just to put this in a little bit more concrete examples here, we know for service plans that this already is being collected in the service plan analysis report, right? And we know that supervision data we can see in the supervision log or the home visiting log when we're having conversations about the service plan. It's already there. We know it's already being collected. So we don't have to think about how is that translated here. The next one would be, how do we quantify it? So what kind of value can we give to this idea to be used in our if we're doing some calculations here? In other words, we really need to be able to prove that our change plan, so what we're doing to actually achieve our goal here, is going to be working or successful in the CQI team. So we need to be able to show that it improved by looking at what it looked like before and what it looked like after. So for this one, we already know service plans are measurable. We can determine whether you're at 100% or not when you look at the service plan analysis report. That's pretty easy there. But thinking about this in terms of conversations for supervision, this might be a little bit more detailed in the data. You might have to figure out a way how you want to quantify how conversations are occurring and what might be the frequency of those conversations for the service plan and supervision. Again, we're going to have a little bit easier of a time later down the road with this in the service plan analysis report. But for right now, if we're working on this as your topic, there's going to be a little bit more digging and a little bit more thought on your end on thinking about how we can measure that portion of it, if that's what you're going to look at. And finally, because we're kind of more visual creatures, and if you want to be able to keep records or you're going to be presenting on this, if you are, you might want to see how the data might be measuring for visualization. So how you might be able to make it look to show that there was a difference visually for people. And you want to be able to track this data over time, because again, you want to show that there was an improvement. You want to be able to see what it looked like before, what it looked like after you enacted this idea of a change plan to meet your goal. So the MIS really for us is, we're lucky in this regard, is that it does allow for us to look at this over time in different time periods. So you can actually see over time how improvement occurred. So once all those have been asked and kind of answered, we can then assume that the measurable criteria is being met. The next one is obtainable. In other words, what we really want for you all to be is, we want you to set realistic goals for yourself. So once improvement efforts begin, it could be that staff, and we hope you are really excited, and it might be easier for you and could be at risk to throw out multiple ideas to improve at once, or one massive goal, thinking you need to make it absolutely perfect at the first shot at this. And that can really maybe not necessarily be obtainable, and that could impede CQI efforts, that could slow down the CQI team. So really what this one idea is that we really want you to be able to pull back the amount we want you to do even if we are enthusiastic about this whole project and we really want you to be, we really hope you are here, we want you to make an accomplishable goal here. So there's several questions you can ask as a CQI team to see how you can help make sure that you're meeting this one. First, you should be able to ask, can direct service staff implement this goal? And it should be able to a lot of the time because they're the ones that are usually delivering services. And in some cases, again, varies by topic, but there's going to be oftentimes they're going to be the ones that might be implementing your change strategy to see if this will work in the first place. So we got to ask, can direct service staff impact this goal? The next one is that has there been prior evidence of this goal being impacted before? So in this case, it might be you need to look at potentially prior research, prior practice literature, and see, has this goal been sought out before? And if so, was it successful or not? Because if it was not, you need to identify where there might be differences between your project and what's already been done that was not successful, because otherwise you might potentially be having an unobtainable goal if you're doing exactly verbatim what they're talking about. With that then too is the next question could be, is it changeable or not? And there's a lot of surrounding this idea, and it could be the idea that, are we as a CQI team not thinking enough outside of the box with our questions? Or are we thinking too limitedly to what we're doing as a home visiting program? So what I mean by this is giving an example of, let's say, homelessness. Could be that we could say that, that's not within the purview of our program. We can't really necessarily address that at the moment. So we can't really address homelessness as our CQI topic. But it could be that you as a home visiting program could outreach to other resources in the community. You could be saying that we're going to make referrals to housing assistance programs, or you could refer to temporary housing services. You could even work with the family on figuring out what life goals they need to obtain and work out on a plan on how to achieve those life goals that could lead to permanent housing. It's just a way of thinking about that over time. So it's really the idea of, are we thinking enough outside of the box in order to make something that we feel might not be achievable actually attainable for us? And the final question that we need to ask, and it's already what I've already discussed about at the beginning of this specific one, which is your initial goal too large? Setting smaller, more incremental goals at the beginning is important. Once that initial goal is obtained, there is no rule that says you cannot push the goalpost back even further. We would really rather you set a smaller obtainable goal at the beginning and meet that goal and then have to push it further back to make even bigger goal, rather than setting something that's just so far in advance not obtainable that you're going to just be, again, as I've already mentioned, deflated as a CQI team and even demoralized as a CQI team. This actually specifically came up when I gave this same talk on attainability to community prevention programs. We talked about this idea that we needed programs to meet 75% of certain measure. And one of the program managers really just upped and called it out and said, I can't make that based on how our program is structured. And we recognize that. And I'll tell you what I told them now is that we recognize you can't necessarily make perfect scores in this regard sometimes, and that's okay. We're really just trying for you to strive for a little bit of improvement. It's, I know it sounds corny, but it's not continuous quality perfection, it's improvement here. So we would really like you to be able to set meaningful and important goals for yourself that are actually obtainable, rather than just not wanting to do it at all in the first place. So those are the questions that you can really ask to get at the idea of attainability. With that, we then have relevant. This is really the idea of, is your goal focusing the attention where it's most needed? So for an example, an agency might choose to focusing on, let's say they're looking at number of mothers that are observed for parent-child interactions at a child's 12-month birthday. And it turns out at this program, only 10% of all parent-child interactions at each child's are actually 10% of parents and children are still enrolled in this program by the child's 12-month birthday. Is that relevant? No, it's not. At that point, you probably need to work on retainment if you want to continue that. For us in service plans, it could be, it turns out that you might have a low percentage of PC1s with a service plan. And it turns out you look into it, you actually start entering them and you get up to 95% of PC1s with your service plans. It's not necessarily relevant now for you to potentially work on that portion of the project. Now you maybe need to see how your conversations around service plans are going in supervision and make that the main topic of your CQI project. So really, to ensure that a SMART aim is relevant here, there's really 3 questions you could be asking. Is it related to home visiting? Is it meaningful to your team and your program? And of all the things that you could immediately work on here, is this the most important for the families that are being served? If you can answer those, then you know you're meeting a relevant criteria here for your program. Time bound. And I'll be honest here, a CQI project without a time frame is achievable, but it's going to be really difficult to manage. Having a time-bound project really can push a CQI project forward. And not only that, but it can build in motivation for the CQI team members, and it holds everyone that's on the CQI team accountable for the tasks that they're supposed to be complete. And it's really important for me to mention here, you need as specific as a time frame as possible here. So for example, if I were to say, by October 31st, 2023, there's no ambiguity about when we want this project done. If I say by October 31st, 2023, we will have 85% of PC1s with a service plan. There's no ambiguity about when we need to do this. That's a heck of a lot better than me saying in 8 months, because I already can tell you what's going to happen if we just go, well, in 8 months. Okay, what's that? Okay, October 15th. You know what? I'm a little busy right now. I'll get to it in November. All of a sudden, November rolls around. All of a sudden, it's Thanksgiving. Okay, you know what? I'll do it right before the end of the new year. All of a sudden, I'm in the middle of the holiday season and everything else is coming down on me. And you know what I'm going to say automatically? You know what? That's next year Walter's problem. I'm not going to be doing that now. So we really need specific timeframes to push us forward. So this is a bit easier of one of the goals to obtain when we look at SMARTY goals. And you really have 2 questions here. First off, is the timeframe specific, like I just gave? So by October 31st, 2023 is better than saying a general fictitious in 8 months kind of idea. And the next is your timeframe that you're setting for yourself obtainable and realistic? And so the best way to achieve this is for you as a CQI team, set a very specific time date, do a backwards calendar from there to the very day that you all are meeting on that day, and see, is that allowing enough time for you as a CQI team to get all the tasks that you need to get done, have adequate time to meet, to kind of discuss those tasks and make adjustments as needed, enough time to implement your change strategy, test it, and then at the very end of the day, make decisions based on that and what adjustments you might need to make based on what you've learned from all of that. If that doesn't seem like it's a realistic, obtainable time frame, push the specific date back. That's fine, and then do another reverse calendar. And once you find that that time frame works, you have a time-bound criteria there, and goal is being met. The next one of SMARTY is inclusive. Are you being inclusive with the issue? And this is also making sure then that the CQI team is including traditionally excluded individuals in all the processes, the activities, and the decision-making for the project. And this is done in really multiple steps. The first step is really the CQI team really making sure that who they're forming has all the agency representatives on their team, but it also is who's being impacted by this topic. So when the CQI team actually interacts with the data, they could see and they select a topic and they identify that there's an issue that certain populations are being influenced more so by this issue than other people. And so at that point, it's up to the CQI team that once they identify who's being impacted by this issue, they think through how they should be contacted and should be put onto the CQI team. And this is really where I was getting at the idea that it is a fluid process here of, if you identify that somebody needs to be included on the CQI team, you can add people. There's no rule against it. You should be adding people as soon as you identify people that need to be included in on this process. So really the question the CQI team should be asking themselves with this one is, are all people involved with the program in this process? And if not, how do we integrate them to have necessary representation? And is there necessary representation here and inclusion on the team formation, all the interactions that are occurring now with the data? Have they been given input on the development of your change strategy? Are they involved in the plan, do, study, act cycle? And have they been involved in the lessons learned? Are they making decisions on what changes could be made to the program and actually getting valid input into that from there? So next, we have equitability as the final one. Essentially, the CQI team needs to make sure that the benefits of the program are really applying equitably to all individuals that are receiving services. And I know this might sound a little bit paradoxical because this could be that certain people are not necessarily having an equitable experience receiving services from a program. So something systematically then needs to be adjusted as a result of this so that everyone has a chance to receive those services. In other words, the CQI team needs to see whether each person that they're serving has different circumstances and whether those circumstances are creating a chance of different allocations of those exact resources to be distributed. So we need to ensure that all resources and opportunities have an equitable outcome for everybody. There's a lot to this. In addition to this too, we need to consider the goals that you're developing as a CQI team. Are they impacting equitably? And if they're not explicitly promoting equity, you need to ensure that they're at least being thought about and interpreted through an equity lens. So you're not creating some sort of inadvertent inequitable impact here. Additionally, with this too, that the CQI team needs to consider when they're including family members and people of all communities here is that, are you putting those who are not receiving an equitable experience? Are you including people on your, let me rephrase this. The people that you're including in your team, are you making sure that you're just not marking for representation? So in other words, those that need a more equitable experience should be able to actually influence the goal, and they should be able to have this goal be achievable in a meaningful way for them. So there's several questions that a CQI team could be asking here. The first is, if our outcome specified in the goal isn't specifically promoting equity and inclusion, is this process of achieving this goal going to improve equity and inclusion for our team and our organization? What unintended impacts might we have on equity from this goal? Have we asked anyone to consult or check for unintended negative equity consequences here for our goal? Do we have key stakeholders missing from our list on who's checking whether equity is impacted in this goal? And if I added an outcome or some sort of goal related to a specific marginalized community, will achieving this goal actually help build power and shrink the disparities for that community? So I know those are a lot of loaded questions, but those are the ones that we need to ask to really ensure that we're having an equitable experience and achieving the equitable goal here for this. For specifically service plans here, it might be that equity is not necessarily occurring for something in staff members. Maybe the target is not being met because certain staff members have an over dispersion of work. So it could be that service plans are falling through the cracks. So an adjustment needs to be made so that that staff member has a more equitable experience in doing the work within the program, just as a way of thinking about it for us in this conversation. Once you've actually achieved an equitable, all of these SMARTY goals, you can move on to what is called a goal or an aim statement. And it's really just a simple there's 4 blanks by blank blank of blank will blank. Writing out a goal or an aim statement will really make sure that ensure that you've met all the SMARTY criteria, as well as just make it a very simplified version of what you would like to achieve. So this first space by when will be the time which you want to achieve your game. So that, like, you want to achieve your goal. So this is how you're going to make it time bound. So by specific date. The second space is going to be a number, percent, or percent change. This is going to be how you quantify the change that you want to see. So this is getting really at attainability here. The third space refers to who is going to be affected by the change plan. So is this caregivers? Is this home visitors? Is this children? This is not responsible for who is going to make the change. This is who will be affected by the change. And this is really getting at relevance, inclusiveness, equitability. And the final space is really what will happen. This is really the desired change that we necessarily want to see. And meeting all of these components of a sentence is really, and answering these as detailed as possible is really going to ensure that you're also then now being specific. And again, this is going to broadly indicate that you've really achieved your SMARTY goals here. So just to show you a concrete example of what this looks like for us in service plans. By October 31st, 2023, 100% of PC1s will have a service plan in the MIS. That's it. It doesn't have to be overthought. It doesn't have to be something scary here. This is just one simple sentence that's really going to try and hold. It is our goal statement. It is our aim that we're trying to make as a CQI team here. So to give a little practice on these things, we're going to do our second breakout room activity here. In your breakout rooms with your group, I just sent out a sheet this morning to those that were on this list. I want you to develop your own SMARTY goals and aim statement for a topic that you all collectively select as a group. So here's just a few, you all can pick what topic you would like. I will give you, here's some pre-selected ones. We could look at prenatal enrollment, breastfeeding, home visiting time, retention rates at year one, assessment timing. But again, sky's the limit. You all can pick what you would like, but yeah, there's just some pre-selected topics for you all to work on. So I will bounce around between rooms. So that way, if you have any sort of questions, I can try and help you out with those. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation afterwards and hearing your conversations in your breakout rooms. And I hope you don't get lost in the virtual hallway, and I will talk to you all soon. Awesome. It seems like we have everyone back. So how is everyone feeling about having worked on some of these SMARTY topics and goals?
I think it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Well, that's what I like to hear. So a little less intimidating than it kind of seemed when you actually got into it.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Another chat. Nancy said that it was easier than expected. Oh, that's what I like to hear as well. Any thoughts on the process for having done that? Oh, Esther, go ahead. You raise your hand.
I just think, like somebody said in our group, it is like a family goal plan, but for our own family in our program, right? In our little family in our country, or wherever your program is a family goal plan for our own little family of workers. So it's nothing that we really should not know what to do. It's intimidated when it's presented to us, and maybe we should understand this is also intimidated for the families when we present a family goal plan discussion. So it's the parallel process is beautiful.
I'm glad to hear that, and I'm going to forever steal that language of the family of the program from here on. That's great. Any other things that people wanted to? And Claudia just said a great comment. It's intimidating because it's programmatic, but yeah, you already have so much experience with goal planning that this is something that you really just inadvertently do know. It's now just putting it into a different way. Any other question or any other things people would like to share from their groups?
I mean, it doesn't seem particularly different from a program improvement plan to me. except that a program improvement plan comes to us from OCFS saying you need to fix this.
Yeah. Rather you get to pick it now instead. Rather you actually get more control if you think of it that way. So that's great.
Right.
Awesome. Well, then I'm going to share my screen and then can everyone see? Slides, perfect. So this was great. Thank you all so much for sharing with that. So the next thing we're just going to briefly be talking about is I'm just going to be talking about what kind of stuff we'll be doing in the in-between months, specifically for March. So just so you know, we'll be sending out this recording. I'll be sending out these slides with all those questions, especially that you could be asking for the Smarty approach. You'll also be getting what's called a team roster. It's a one sheet, kind of like what you just got for the Smarty goals, where it's just going to have you fill out who would be what role, why. And then what you're going to do too after that is work through your own data to identify an area of service plans that you believe needs improvement. So that's something that you work on there. If you have any questions about that and what you want to look at, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have or send you to who could be able to help with that question. And then we're also going to fill out the Smarty goal and aim statement worksheet, which you've actually worked on today a little bit. So I will send that out as well. Again, so you have a fresh, clean version of that with this, as well as the recording, all those materials and resources. With that too, I did want to note that there is additional resources that you already have available to you as well. Bikini recently just put out a service plan handbook that will help you with some of those components of it. It is not on the Healthy Family New York website as of right now, but it will be coming soon. It is available now on the Transfer of Learning website, and I did embed this link into the slides. So when you get these slides, you could be able to click that. You'll put in your login information and access it there. Additionally, Bikini also has a wonderful, it's so good, CQI guide. It's really user-friendly. So it is in the Healthy Families New York website program manager tab. Again, I embedded the link here in the slide. So when you get these slides, you should be able to access it while putting in your login information there. But with that, I'm actually going to just have to say thank you all so much for coming to this. This was great. Thank you all so much for your participation, really just being open to this process. I'd love to answer whatever questions that you have now. And we really look forward to seeing you on April 20th for workshop number 2 at that point. So yeah, thank you all again so much.
Walter, I have a question for you.
Please.
I think it was the guide that I had printed out and sent out to the team, the service plan guide. But if it's the same one, what it showed was in column 1, it was based on the parent survey and not based on the frog. And trying to help, now I'm new to Healthy Families, period. I'm a program manager, but I'm new to Healthy Families. Trying to get the team to fit the 10 components of the 14 components of the frog into the 10 components of the parent survey. Is that right?
Okay.
Is the guide updated to mirror the frog components or domains? Sorry.
I believe so, but I'll have to double check, and I'll also talk to. Okay.
No, I have to say, Kara, it has been updated, and the guide that is on, like you might have, we should bring that down from the website. So thank you for pointing that out. And there is a newer version done after March that was updated in the website, but you should use the resource that Walter mentioned, the new service plan handbook that Pikeni just added to the Transfer of Learning website.
Okay, I will look for that because I was looking.
Yeah, like it was updated to like remove, like parent survey language, and now there's 14 domains and not 10. So if anything that you see with parent survey or 10 domains, you know that it's outdated.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Corinne, for that help on that.
Since we also have accreditation meetings to go to now, there's a lot of time to carve out. What if you can't make it to one of the meetings for this?
That is fine. We're still recording these, so we will share those with you as well. We recognize that there's a lot going on with this. So yeah, we will send you the recordings and all the materials that we get with this for that.
And Trina, this is Claudia. I'm the accreditation person this go around. I would say, if anything, come to this meeting, because I know that there will be more interactive kind of activities here. The accreditation meetings that I have planned, the 101s, will be kind of walkthroughs of what's expected, and the interactive piece will be more those office hours that you'll have scheduled with your program contract managers that are assigned for the accreditation process.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, both sets, the CQI and the accreditation, will be recorded and will be made available to the entire system.
Okay.
The other thing too, Trina, and for other folks, if you can't make it to one of these calls, you can send someone who is part of your CQI team, right? That's working on this, because you're not going to be doing this in isolation. You're not going to be doing it alone, right? And so having others involved in it is a good idea, right? And so that way, you can kind of, meet all of those different demands effectively.
Okay.
Yeah, just to mirror what Kristen said, that's actually why we encouraged not only program managers, but somebody else, as another supervisor or somebody else from your program, to attend this time around. So if you haven't had somebody from your program come this time around, please feel free for the April one, have them come. They're more than welcome.
So this is something that we start now.
When we send out, yeah, you can start working on it now if you'd like to. And the work that we're sending out that you'll be working on the in-between month, nothing that we're asking you to do for March hasn't just been covered in this workshop now. So then for the April workshop, we'll be giving you some additional information and the next steps in the process. And then so for May, that work will pertain to what was going on in the April workshop. So all of it is just kind of it's an additional step up each time.
And just to clarify what Kristen said, there in the documentation that will be sent out, some more guidelines will be, or clarify information and expectations will be sent out for those new programs that don't have data or not much data, and for McV programs. Okay, because we all recognize that everyone is kind of starting at a different point. However, we all want to get to that same standard expectation at some time point. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I just clarify one thing? Sorry, Walt. Sometime in March, you will get another Zoom registration link. So just know you can definitely share the registration link. However, once you get the Zoom link after you have registered, that belongs to you. So anyone who logs in will log in as Claudia Miranda. So if I share it with 10 people, there will be 10 Claudias in the meeting. But feel free to share the registration link with anyone within your program. And that will go out sometime in March.
Thank you. Have a nice week, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, and so within the next week or so, you'll be getting all these resources. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Walter.